Today, we're gonna talk about how to do your first 180s on a surfboard. So a front side or a backside 180. I'm Evan Netsch, and we're back here today to talk about your first rotations on a surfboard. And for me, this would just be a simple front side or backside 180. So let's talk about the differences between the two and kind of, you know, how to go about doing it and what you're going to progress into from a 180. So in another video, we're talking about doing a toe side 180. Here we're going to talk about just doing a heel side 180, a front side or a backside 180. So a front side 180, if I'm riding right now, left foot forward, I'm going to ollie up and I'm going to push my back foot forward. That's a front side 180, which is the same direction of rotating as you do in a back roll. It's a little bit confusing. A back roll is actually a front side rotation, where a front roll, whether you're on a twin tip or a surfboard, a front roll is actually a backside rotation as you turn back into the wind. So for our backside 180, our backside 180 is basically the same rotation as a front roll, where we're going to ollie up and we're going to push our back foot forward. We're going to land backwards, which is essentially the equivalent of blind on a twin tip, and we're going to keep rotating around. So we're going to start with the front side 180. It's a little bit easier, and for me, I think it's just a really good way to get comfortable with your first rotations and just know how that board responds underneath your feet. So as we go into our first front side 180s, what we really want to focus on is just keeping ourselves over top of our board and not kicking our board out in front of us. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go up and we're going to do a really, really small air. So if you haven't done your first strapless airs, check out our how to do a strapless air video here. But what we want to do is we don't want to do a big strapless air. We want to do more of just a tiny little chop hop off a small little wave, ideally, and just kind of sheet in a little bit and move around. So what we're going to do is we're going to ride, I would say, maybe a little bit slower than normal. And that's because we're going to be landing backwards. At least initially, landing backwards at speed when there's fin catch can be a little bit tricky. So we're gonna ride along. We're gonna move our back foot back a little bit, just behind or just kind of on top of the fins to have better control. We're gonna ride with the kite nice and high, but the kite nice and steady too, right? Maybe 11 o'clock. We always want to have that kite in front of noon to keep that forward speed. I'm going to bring my hands very close to the center of the bar because we don't want that kite to move very much. And we also are going to be taking off of our front hand to help our body rotate and only leaving our back hand on the bar. We want to make sure we don't pull the kite back. So hand centered on the bar, and be ready to kind of roll that wrist forward to steer that kite to the left, even though you have your right hand on the bar. So we're going to kind of pop off of our back foot, edging into the wind, ideally off a little tiny piece of chop or maybe off a little wave. And as we pop up, we're really going to suck our front foot towards our body. Bring our knee to our chest. We're going to take our front hand off the bar to allow our shoulder to rotate into the wind. And as we bring that front knee into our chest, we're going to really extend our back leg, pushing that back leg forward. But at the same time, we want to kind of keep our weight and keep our control with our front foot. So knee to the chest, extend your back leg to bring that tail around, and then when we land with more weight on your front foot. Sorry, on your old front foot, which is your back foot now. If you land with all your weight now on the tail of the board, so we come around, we land with all of our weight on the tail of the board. The tail's either going to dig in, but what's for sure going to happen is our fins are going to immediately engage and grab us. So I would say what we really want to do is we want to over rotate a little bit. And so when we land, the tail of the board is actually into the wind just slightly. That way, when we do rock our weight forward and those fins grab, we can finish that rotation spinning around. Or when we land, we can keep all that weight on our back foot, keep those fins clear, and kind of ride with a little bit of control. And then you can kind of just bring your front shoulder back to your front hand back to the bar. And as you do that, you can pull your shoulder around. You can shift your weight a little bit more over your front foot. Those fins will grab, and that board will slide back around to that heel side position. So you can either do that 180, continue your rotation, or do that 180, re-engage your fins, and just kind of switch straight back to how you started. Now your other type of 180 is a backside 180, which I would say is a lot harder than a frontside 180. And for myself, I've spent a lot of time doing these and a lot of time doing front rolls. And the interesting thing is, a 180 is a lot more basic of a trick than a front roll. Frankly, it's easier, but it's harder in a way because you're landing backwards, which is less consistent. So for myself, I've mastered front rolls. I can almost say I can do a front roll more consistently and easier than I can do a 180. And that's not because the front roll is easier, but that's because once you figure out how to do it, there's less variables. You're always landing nose of the board forward. You're not spinning and kind of landing backwards where it's kind of hard to know what's going on. So backside 180s are pretty tricky. Even for myself, I've been doing them forever. I still crash them more often than I crash a front roll, I would say. But for these, I would start off, I would say I'd probably start off maybe in a little bit lighter wind. You certainly want to be powered, but you don't want to be just completely lit on a small kite. Just more going on, and just having that kite steady, I think really helps a lot. So as I'm riding, with the front side 180, we let go of our front hand to push the tail into the wind. With the backside 180, we're gonna let go of our back hand to bring the tail into the wind the other way. So as we're riding, we're gonna kind of edge just a little bit into the wind. I try to do that with the board very flat, really kind of pointing and using the fins more than the rail of the board, because again, we don't want to have all this weight on our heels. We want to kind of, as we pop in the air, really use the ball of our feet to bring that wind underneath the bottom of the board. That front side 180, we're bringing the board up and we're putting weight on our heels to bring that bottom of the board into the wind. Backside 180, we want to put that weight on our toes. That way the bottom of the board rotates this way to keep wind underneath the board. So as we start the rotation, we're gonna kind of ollie off the water, let go of our back hand, look over our back shoulder, and push this tail around. I almost like to say it's almost like a sweeping motion with my back foot, using that ball of my foot, scooping my toes down to actually change the tilt of the deck of the board. And I'm gonna look over my shoulder, and as I come around to land backwards, what you want to do is you want to land, right now I would say this would be maybe like 90% of the way. If I land like this, I'm going to catch my fins and probably fall backwards. I want to go, I would say, a little bit past 180 degrees. That way I'm actually landing with my tail going downwind just a little bit. And when I land like this, I can push my bar forward and kind of sheet in at the same time as that board comes across my body. And as soon as I land backwards, I push the nose around the rest of the way. And that backside 180 turns kind of into a full 360 with that second 180 on the water. If you don't want to go for that full 360, as soon as you land backwards, it's going to be, I would say, almost impossible to ride backwards in this backside 180, because you're basically riding blind without any fin. So as soon as you land backwards, I would say, if you're not looking over your back shoulder, you're looking over your front shoulder, you'll land backwards, and then you'll just slide back right around to heel side immediately. The second you land, those fins are engaged and they're gonna flip you back around. So I would certainly go after my backside 180 as more of a progression to working up to a front roll, which is a future video that we will have here on this channel. But I would look at that backside 180 as a progression to that front roll. Therefore, as I land backwards, I would focus on really continuing to look over that back shoulder, push that bar around, and continue that rotation all the way through to do a full 360. So a 180 in the air, then your second 180 sliding around on the surface of the water. And I think that's really gonna help you progress kind of into that next step in that trick, which would be a a front roll, or which is a full backside 360 in the air. So stay tuned for that video coming here soon. We'd also love to hear what you have to say, if you agree, disagree, or have additional comments on what would be helpful for learning your first 180s and your first strapless rotations in the air. So feel free to comment below. Thanks for listening today, and hopefully see you back here again in the future.